आज हर तरफ डिजाइन सिर्फ एस्थेटिक्स का नाम बन गया है, लेकिन किसी से पूछो क्यों बनाया, तो शायद जवाब खामोशी हो। ये पॉडकास्ट उन्हीं सवालों का कोना है जहां डिजाइन को सिर्फ देखने के लिए नहीं, समझने के लिए रखा जाता है। डिजाइन के नाम पे हर जगह फालतू आवाज है। सोचने वाला कोई नहीं, सिर्फ ट्रेंड के पीछे दौड़। ये चिल नहीं है, ये कैजुअल भी नहीं है, और ये डेफिनेटली आपका यूजुअल डिजाइन ज्ञान नहीं है। वेलकम टू डिजाइन एंड डिस्कशन।
So, well, I'm getting very old. I'm 89 years old right now. I've retired 5 times, and see, I'm a failure at retirement. If you want to be a leader in a company, you have to think like the company. So I blame the designers. I don't blame business people. I blame the designers who are not adding any value to the company in terms of the way it should be run. Designers, in order to move up in the company, have to learn to think of what is it that the company needs to survive.
I think, from the perspective, the way you're coming up, great designers are definitely required in the industry. And in the last conversation, you have indicated that you are building designers. So if suppose you have to build such designers, what kind of attitude or attribute you see in them, or how to grow in that particular direction, if you can focus a little bit on that.
Great. I have a follow-up question. Do you think the design universities should cover marketing strategy and technology as a subject? Because the current design education in India doesn't cover this.
Hi, good evening everyone from India. Good morning to you, Mr. Norman, and hello to everyone else attending from different parts of the world. My name is Kunjal Singh. I am the Fest Coordinator for Moodboard Design Conference 2025. Me and my fellow coordinator, Swastik Vishwakarma, welcome you all to this very exciting panel discussion featuring the Don Norman, hosted as part of MBDC 2025, the annual design fest organized by Moodboard Design Club IIT Patna. This panel discussion is being held in collaboration with Sandskriti as community partner and SandCup Design Studio as the production partner, bringing together some of the most influential voices in design. Moodboard Design Conference is more than just an event. It's an immersive journey that begins with a month-long project series where beginners explore different design domains through fun and collaborative projects. This series ends in a grand exhibition showcasing the incredible work created by our participants in front of the guests. In addition, we host renowned guests from the design industry for expert talks and panel discussions, offering valuable insights and inspiration to budding design enthusiasts. Today, we have with us an extraordinary lineup of visionaries who have shaped the world of design, innovation, and user experience. First, we have a true legend among us in the field of design and cognitive science, Dr. Don Norman. He is famous for Norman doors that are confusing to open. He is a distinguished professor emeritus at the University of California, San Diego, former vice president of advanced technology at Apple, and co-founder of the Nelson Norman Group emeritus. He has 3 honorary degrees, is a member of the National Academy of Engineering, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and an honorary fellow of the Design Research Society. When asked about what kind of designer he is, he answers, "I design designers. I'm an educator." And indeed, he received the British Sir Misha Black Medal for distinguished services to design education. His 21 books include Emotional Design, Design for Everyday Things, and Design for a Better World, Meaningful, Sustainable Humanity Center. Next, we have Mr. Anil Reddy, an artist at heart, designer by soul, and entrepreneur by choice. He is a visionary in the world of design. He is the founder of Lollipop Design Studios, where he built a globally recognized award-winning design powerhouse from a 2-person garage setup, impacting millions of lives through user-centric design. Now, as the founder and designer at Happy Pet, he continues to channel his creativity into crafting meaningful and impactful design solutions. With a strong foundation in design education from India and New Zealand, Anil brings a global perspective and a deep passion for the transformative power of design. And finally, we have Mr. Pramod Sinha, a champion of digital design with over 25 years of experience in building tech-driven ventures that stand the test of time. As the co-founder of SandCup Design Studio, he is dedicated to creating intuitive, problem-solving digital products on a global scale. He is also the creator of Sandskriti, a thriving designers community committed to empowering creatives with knowledge and truth. Without further ado, let's dive into today's discussion. I now invite Mr. Pramod to take this discussion forward as the esteemed moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunjal. Thank you so much. So, this is one of the best conversation I'm going to have, with the father of design. And I'm very excited to go as much as deeper possible. And I think we all guys are aligned with that, perspective. So as you said, Don Normanson has written 21 books on many different topics. And with the collective intelligence of, combining his psychological understanding, engineering, mathematics, and economics together. And he is a designer by choice, I guess, because he has done a lot of things from a design perspective. And he has written a book, I think first book in 1969, which is Memory and Attention, which is again much more human centric. And the next book, which I'm very excited about, is The Design of Everyday Things, which is written in 1988 and again revised in 2013. And still, Don Norman sir says that this book is still wrong. So I really want to understand, a lot of millions of people understand a lot of things about the design from that particular book. So why you say, sir, that this book is wrong in considering today's situation?
Before I answer, let me say I am not the father of design. Designers existed long before I was born. Many people have contributed, very strong insights and developments in design. I am simply yet another person who has come along and done my little bit. So, yes, this book, you all know, it's been translated to many languages. It's sold over 1 million copies. And it's wrong. So why do I say it's wrong? Well, there's nothing wrong in the book. Everything that's in the book I believe in today. I still teach today. I still use today. What's wrong is what's not in the book. What's not in the book, well, that's what this book is about. So I have written many books on design, maybe 10 or 11. As you heard, 21 books total, but half of them are design. And they're all about making things easier to use and easier to understand. And that's good, and that's important. But the world has many problems today. And these do not address the kinds of problems we have in the world today. And so, I'm getting very old. I'm 89 years old right now. I've retired 5 times. And see, I'm a failure at retirement. And when I retired the 5th time, I said to myself, what should I do? Well, as you heard, I'm an educator. I write books. I travel. I talk to many people like I'm doing now. And so I thought, well, okay, what could I write about? And I thought I would write about the problems of the world. But actually, the more I studied them, the more I said, there's nothing for me to say because all the problems are very well known with very, very good writers and people who have studied them. Well, I should talk about the solutions. No, the solutions are very well known. Many good books, many good people. But the problem is the solutions are not being applied. And that, I said, is maybe where I can say something because it's about human behavior. And, well, I have 2 degrees in electrical engineering, so I understand technology. I have a PhD in psychology. I understand people. I've been a business executive. I understand how that works. I've testified in the United States government in order to get the first Wi-Fi band and high-definition television standards. I know a little bit how politics work. So I wrote this book, Design for a Better World, but only talking about a few of the issues. The issues I thought I could make something different. I could say something different about. But in every one of these cases, I talk about the problems by telling you about what other people have said. And I talk about the solutions, telling you what other people have said. But I put it together in a different way than I had seen before. So the real point about what's wrong with design of everyday things is, well, we make beautiful objects, designers do. But where does the material come from? How do we destroy the earth in order to get the material? How do we pollute the air, the water, and the land in smelting the materials to make it usable, in manufacturing the device, for that matter, and shipping it across the world. And then we make these wonderful devices, especially electronic devices, small and thin and light. And in order to do that, they can't be opened up. They can't be repaired easily. But its lifetime is over, which is only a few years. What do you do with it? It's very difficult to take it apart and reuse the parts, so it's thrown away. And again, contaminating the world. Finally, people who do digital products say, oh, well, that doesn't affect me. I don't make harmful physical products that, destroy the environment. Yes, you do. Because every digital product works on a physical product. And moreover, it takes a lot of electrical power to run all those digital products, especially artificial intelligence. And where does that power come from? From coal burning plants, oil burning plants, gas burning plants? And then what do we do about people's cultures? How do we deliberately design applications and games and chats and social media to be addictive, to make you stay for hours and hours and hours? In fact, the business schools teach how to do that. It's considered good business. You don't want people to leave your application, leave your website, and so we make it addictive. When you do a design, a game, it's very clever. You make it so that just before your character is killed or the game is over, you almost succeed. It's important. You just come so close, you think, to succeeding that when you die, I want to try again. I almost made it that time. Let me try again and again and again and again, and hours pass. So what are we doing to ourselves? So that's what started in the book. But actually, it's worse than that. Because what I point out in the book is part of this is a result of the economic system of the world, which puts short-term profit over quality of life, over long-term quality. That puts actually, that may be the major factor. And I think it impedes the Western educational system as well. I'm not a fan of STEM education. And everybody seems to like STEM education. Why? Well, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I'm well trained in all of these. But why do we build things? Isn't it for people? STEM has nothing about people in it. And most design education has very little about people in it, or about society, about the harm we're doing to the environment. And the most important area that understands this is the humanities. And it's the humanities that suffer because, we have to do STEM. Why are we teaching these wasteful things about literature and history and philosophy? Let's go back to science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the other stuff. No, what good does it do? They don't make products. They don't make money. No, they make us understand life and lead us to a better quality life. And that's what I want to do. Now, one more comment. I apologize, but you'll have to get used to it. When you ask me a simple question, I sometimes give a very long answer.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I have a counter question to this. In your recent interview, you mentioned that you bought a new BMW i4, which is an EV vehicle. While we all appreciate EV vehicles, is their use sustainable? Is EV vehicles the answer for the future? What do you think about it now?
Well, I think the answer is yes. And that will become better and better with time because the most difficult part of the vehicle today is the batteries. And they're very difficult to reuse, although there are many reuses of batteries. For example, a battery that no longer has enough power for a car is actually a very good backup battery. You store energy in your home, or even you get thousands and thousands of them to store energy for a village or town. Because if we use solar cells or windmills, then they don't always produce power. So we need some storage for when they're not working. And the battery way we make batteries has changed dramatically. And the new batteries are lighter and stronger, more powerful, and also less destructive to the environment. And in fact, in China, many of the EVs are designed with a different kind of battery that doesn't catch fire as easily as the ones we're using today. So um, there are parts of today's automobiles that are not completely sustainable, but I think they're more sustainable than the traditional automobile. So it is an improvement. But I also see many people and companies working to change it so that as much as possible it will be part of the circular economy, that every component in the automobile will be reused, maybe with one exception. There's one dangerous component in the automobile that most people don't even know about. One component that pollutes the air and is dangerous for health that most people don't know about. You know, when you drive your car for many hours or years, you have to buy new tires, yes? The tires get thinner and thinner. Well, what do you mean it gets thinner? Where does the rubber go? It goes into the air as small, tiny particles. So tiny they go through even the best masks, and they pollute the lungs and they pollute the air. So it turns out, I didn't discover this until very recently. It turns out that the tires that you drive pollute the air dramatically. And they're especially bad with when you accelerate fast and when you brake fast, but also with heavy vehicles. So one problem about electric vehicles is batteries are very heavy. And so it's interesting. There's a pollution of the air because of the tires.
I just want to mention something here. A few years back, when I visited Don's house, I witnessed what is reusable. Don has used his old iPad and turned that into a wall clock. Am I right?
Yes, I still have it right there.
I just can't believe, because I always throw away my old electronic gadgets. But after seeing your house, I realized that how important it's to keep and reuse these things. And also, I love your desk, the way you have retained all the electronics. I just wanted to make that note here.
Forward to using. I just was at a conference in healthcare at a hospital where I gave the closing keynote, but it was all about using the new Apple Vision Pro. It's an augmented reality. They call it spatial computing. But I was very impressed with the quality that Apple has done. And I'm thinking that I'm going to buy one because I sit here in front and I have this big microphone. And I have a huge display there and another huge display there. And you maybe go to people's offices and you can't see them because they're sitting behind big displays. But with this device, of course, I'll be wearing this big helmet, but I don't need any more displays. I can have as many displays as I want. There's one there, and there's one there, and there's one there. And they're all very high resolution and very big, and they're in the air, and I can move them about. And I can therefore have a clean desk, more room for me to actually do some work on the desk. Right now, the desk is crowded with electronic equipment. And I can even on an airplane. I travel a lot, and wouldn't it be nice on the airplane? I still have 3 or 4 huge big screens I'm typing on or talking to. So, yeah, some of the technology may actually, in some sense, help us by disappearing.
Nice. So, sir, according to the conversation we had now, I understand that sustainability is very important and key area to focus on. And any responsible design is basically, circular around the circular economy, where the sustainability is one of the important component for it. But from a designer's perspective, when we see, I think there is a huge role that designers can play in order to bring that in forefront so that people can understand the value of design in their real life, real situation, real models, and things like that. But when we talk about the current situation of design, most of the people think designers are designers. They can't be CEO of the company, or they cannot lead the business, or maybe some of the department, let's say marketing, sales, they don't have the integrated designers with them in order to grow and communicate better to their audience. How do you see today's designer and how we can improve in that particular direction, sir?
Thank you for the good question. I will comment on sustainability. Sustainability is not enough. To sustain something means to keep it in the current state, and the current state is a bad state. So we actually have to reverse ourselves and recover on the better state, the better environment, better quality of life, better air, better water, better land. But let me focus on the role of a designer, which is your question. Designers often complain that nobody pays them attention. They work for a company, and the company doesn't listen to them. Or you work in a design studio, but even so, you have to do what your clients want. And most clients are not interested in having you tell them what to do. They tell you what to do. Why is designers are in the middle level. In a company, they're in the middle level. They're considered part of the infrastructure. Well, yes, it's good to have designers. At least in the old days, it was designers make things that are pretty. And so we don't even call upon the designer until we're all finished, because then they can turn it and make it pretty. So I think most companies have now learned that no, if you really want a well-designed product, you have to call on designers early on, in the very beginning. But not from the very beginning. Designers almost have no say about what the product will be. Why is that? We have a lot of knowledge about how people use our products and what they need. Now, many designers say, oh, the edge because my business, my bosses don't understand me. And I ask them, well, how do you try to explain what you do? And they usually say, we show them the wonderful work we've done. We show them the prizes we've won. We show them the models we're building. Yes. And if I were the executive and you came and told me that, I would say, that's very nice. Yes, I'm very pleased with the work you do. That's why we hired you. But now, excuse me, but I have to get to work. If you want to be a leader in a company, you have to think like the company. So I blame the designers. I don't blame business people. I blame the designers who are not adding any value to the company in terms of the way it should be run. And so you have to, for example, think about what business a company is in, or for that matter, what business your clients are in, and try to imagine what could make the company better. But now, even if you come up with those ideas, and many of you probably have good ideas, how do you convince them? You don't convince them with models. You have to understand the language of your customers. Don't we teach that? When you design a telephone or a bed or anything, you have to understand the people you're designing for and speak their language so they can understand it. Well, one of the people you're designing for is your client or your boss. Or not so much your boss. Your boss understands you. It's the boss of your boss of your boss. It's the high-level executives. And what language do they speak? They speak the language of business. They want to see spreadsheets. They want to see profits. They want to see the return on investment. They want to see sales. They want to see high margins. You have to learn that language. Now, I've asked designers, I say, well, designers are taught very narrowly. You basically learn really the skills of design and very little about anything else. But I say, that's true of engineering too. They learn the mathematics and the materials and the skills of engineering, yet they get to be chief design officer, or chief product officer, or chief technology officer, or chief executive officer of a company. How come? Well, I had told they get MBA, Master of Business Administration degrees. And I say, yeah, so why don't you? Designers, in order to move up in the company, have to learn to think of what is it that the company needs to survive. Now, profits are not bad, because if you don't make a profit, you don't survive. Obscene profits are obscene, but it needs to be able to be a successful business. So, yes, you need to learn about business. You don't have to go back to school and get an MBA. You can learn by yourself. I don't have an MBA, but I've learned enough that I've actually been teaching MBAs. But I learned by, I made friends with people in marketing, and I had them teach me, and I read the same books that they recommended to me. And I also, again, by being an executive, learned from the other executives. I learned about scheduling, about costs, about supply chains. You have to learn about business. So that's what I say to designers. If you really want to have an impact, you must learn to offer value to the company. And then as you rise in the company, probably to the community and to the nation, for that matter, to the world, because large companies are international. Does that answer the question? Or at least a beginning answer?
Yeah, it's a good direction for everyone, I guess. So designer has to understand, their values and if,
But let's be careful. Not every designer.
yeah.
Okay. So because we still need people who are skilled designers doing design. But in every company, there ought to be at least one designer or two, just a small number, who rise up and become managers and leaders. I don't want everybody to do that, because then who would do the designs? Again, take a look at engineering. Most engineers stay as engineers. Isn't technology wonderful? And so that in engineering, in large companies, there often are two tracks that you can get promoted on. One, you get promoted as a skill in your field. And the others, you get promoted as a manager. And both tracks are necessary. You need people who are highly skilled, but you also need managers who understand these people and therefore can do a good job of managing and moving the company in new directions. So I just want to make sure I'm not saying every single designer has to go and learn about business and do these things. Actually, every designer should understand enough about business so that when they're asked, when they say, we must do design research, we need more time, and the company says, oh, we don't have any time or budget to do it, you have to understand why that might be a good answer. Or you might have to understand why. Well, I have a favorite example about a radio from Sony back a long time ago. Sony had a radio you could play music on. And one day the marketing people insisted the technology people would figure out how to make it do much better sound. And the marketing people said, oh, let's add a button that you don't have the better sound unless you push the button. And all the designers thought that was stupid. Really stupid. This really gives really better sound. Why shouldn't it always give better sound? Why do you need a special button to make it better? Well, the marketing people were right. Because how would you know it's better? Well, because you push the button and you say, wow, this is much better. And so you never push it again. You always leave it on. But that button was very important in order to sell the product. It can, in the store, people could turn it on and off and see the difference and say, oh, yes. So again, we have to understand what other divisions of the company can add, the sort of important things they can do.
Great. I have a follow-up question. Do you think the design universities should cover marketing strategy and technology as a subject? Because the current design education in India doesn't cover this.
Yes, and I'm an advisor now in several different Indian design schools, and I'm arguing for that. But, well, let me go back to STEM, and I'll tell you another reason I don't like STEM, which will also help answer this question. There's another reason I don't like STEM, is that we teach science separately than technology, separately than engineering, separately than math. And when you say teach science, what does that mean? Or teach engineering? There are how many different kinds of engineers? Many, many, many. And even when you go to any one kind of engineering, or just take computer science, for example, how many different kinds of computer scientists are there? And if you take a look at theoretical computer scientists and you take a look at software engineers, and may both be in the same department, have the same degree, but they don't understand each other. They're very different fields. And if you want to understand other fields, don't take a course in those other fields because you won't know how it relates to you. When you learn mathematics, sometimes it's hard to learn because I don't know why I'm learning all this stuff. I want to change from teaching courses to teaching projects. Because if I teach a project, then guess what? You need to use all these different fields to put together. A specialist is very important because they have deep knowledge, but specialists can't build a product. To build a product, we take the work of many specialists and combine them. You have to have some general education. And so I want to teach projects. So in the project, I'll begin to realize that, oh yeah, I'm a great designer, but I didn't understand programming or circuit design or materials or timetables, schedules, budgets. And you need to understand enough about them to understand why they're important and to understand how to call upon these people to help you. So, yes, I think every designer should have some experience in all these different fields, but the easiest way is not through a course, but by working on real projects, real ones, not fake ones. They suddenly begin to understand that, well, this is a wonderful product. Everybody agrees, but nobody in the world knows about it. How do we get the word out? What do we do? How do we get it to stores? How do we get people to learn about it? How do we know what price it should be? And we made it so well and so nice, and it's very expensive, and nobody will buy it, etc. So they have to learn it, but not. Most universities will say, don't add another course. We don't have enough room for all the courses we have to teach. Well, I think they're teaching wrong. If you combine these, it makes a big difference. And I want to combine not just technical fields. I want to have something about humanities, about ethics. In fact, I'm working with the Design Village in Noida, so that our DNDA, the nonprofit charity that I'm working with, has established now an ethical committee. And the Design Village asked us to set it up, but we now have about 8 or 9 senior designers from around the world. So that's good because they have different backgrounds and different cultures working together to try to develop a set of ethics, which is going to be, most professional fields have a set of ethics. Design does not. We have to have that. But I don't want these ethics to be taught as a course. It's too important to be taught as a course. It should be simply part of everything that we do. So the answer to your question is, yes, everybody should know something about it, but no, not through separate courses.
Yep, this makes greater sense. I think, from the perspective, the way you're coming up, great designers are definitely required in the industry. And in the last conversation, you have indicated that you are building designers. So if suppose you have to build such designers, what kind of attitude or attribute you see in them, or how to grow in that particular direction? If you can focus a little bit on that, it will clear many people's doubt.
Well, I think anybody can be a designer because design is creating something to make people's lives better. But there are many, many different ways of doing that. And well, I'm a good example. When I design something, it's ugly. It looks like it's designed by an engineer because that's me. And I can make it easy to use, yes. But I can't actually design something real without the help of many other people. So the point I want to make is I have certain skills and I lack other very important skills. So it's very important, I argue, that everybody know what they are really good at and what they enjoy doing. And usually that's the same thing. Usually you enjoy doing the things you're good at. But you should also know the things you're not good at. And in some cases, well, you'll have to just learn that thing you're not good at because it's essential that you also know it. But in most cases, like my inability to make something that's really attractive, I make sure there's always people working with me who can do that. And they're working with me from the very beginning, because the best way to make a really attractive product is you start thinking about all of the requirements together from the very beginning. And again, right now, when you go if you get accepted to a design school or design program, you often have to show a portfolio of the early work you've done. And I think that's wrong, because the portfolio tends to emphasize skill of drawing, skills and aesthetics, and that's not essential for all designers. Suppose I'm in India and I'm working in public health, and I've been to a number of the hospitals in India, and some of them are some of the best hospitals in the world, and some of them are very, very weak and well, they're not well funded, and so people are overworked and it's a difficult environment. I don't need to be a good drawer or a good sketcher or do things that are beautiful, but I need to understand activities and how we might structure activities that's better for everybody. And again, it's also important that I don't go into a community like a hospital in any country, not even the United States, and tell people how to do things. What I try to do is work with them, because usually the people who work in an area or people who live in an area, they know what their problems are. They don't have the resources, though, to be able to address them. And so a lot of what I do as a designer is help people design for themselves. And that's a different kind of skill. So the answer to your question is, I think that the design schools, not just in India, but around the world, are too narrow in what they are trying to accomplish. Because I think we can take almost anybody and turn them into somebody of great value to the discipline of design.
I think I understand, that kind of attitude is anyways required in order to move forward, for the designers to learn something extra from the whole, journey that they are doing. So their experiences are their learning, and every designer, they start, giving their own experiences, and they are aware about what they are doing. I think they will move forward from that direction, maybe psychologically.
But it's very important to know what you're bad at, and to know what you don't do, so that you bring in other people to work with you. That's what's rare. Some of the best designers in the world were never trained as designers.
Yeah,
That's true.
so from the perspective, I have another point. Like, you have indicated that there are two type of people. One are thinkers, another one is doers, and you consider more of the designers are more doers. Can you tell me more about this? Like, what is doers and thinkers perspective?
Well, I actually usually say they're academics and practitioners. They're people in the universities that are thinkers and writers. And they get promoted because they think, and they get promoted because they publish in journals. But very few of them actually do anything. And because that's not how they are rewarded. And then you have the people in industry. In universities, there's a lot of thinking and little doing. In industry, there's a lot of doing and little thinking. And it's not because the people are not smart, intelligent, etc., but they don't have any time. There's Norman's Law, which is the day the product team is put together, it's over its budget and it's behind schedule. One of the reasons, by the way, it's hard for a company to decide to do a new product. And they might take them 6 months to make up their minds. And then when they finally make up their mind, we have to rush. We have to get it ready for the holiday season or for the start of school or for whatever. And, if you would have made a decision faster, we would have more time. But they don't. So I think it's good to have good, deep thinkers. We need that. But most people in academics have never worked in a company. Design is a little bit special, because in design, actually every practice is a bit special, because to teach design skills requires a large number of faculty. and that's expensive. And so schools often cannot afford individual faculty for the students. So you bring a lot of people who are actually designers, practicing designers, and they help teach your courses. And that actually therefore brings people who are doing things into the classroom. But in other disciplines like engineering, you don't do that. It's all people who are good at theory, but they don't understand what really goes on in a company. Look, in business schools, most business professors have never worked in a business. So a lot of what they teach you is their theory as opposed to what is really necessary. I discovered that when I finally had my first job in industry, which was Apple. I went in at a very high level because already was a high-level professor. I thought I understood business. I had already been consulting with Apple and working with other companies. But once I started working in the company, it was completely different. And I realized a lot of my knowledge was useless. And often, though, they would ask me some questions. Well, how do we do this? And I thought to myself, that's a very important question, but we never thought of that question and we never studied it in the university. We should have. And so I found that going back and forth was really valuable because in industry I'd learned what was the really important questions to be asked, but they didn't have time. And back in the university, I could tell them what I thought were the important questions where they did have time to work on them. So that's what it is. It's whether you think or do has a lot to do with the environment you're in, not necessarily with the skills you have.
So, Don, I have another question. So, most of the questions the students have asked, it's around the AI, which is the hot topic today. So, in your recent statement, you mentioned the world is a mess. Do you think AI is here to help to clear the mess or add more mess to it?
AI was developed by technologists, and I don't think any one of them wanted to make the world a mess or to increase the mess, but they were so excited about what they could do. So it's interesting because first of all, they were greatly surprised about the capabilities of what they had built. And one of them quit, said, I think I'm doing wrong. And that person is interesting because many, many, many years ago, I started a cognitive science department at my University of California, San Diego. And we got some money from a foundation and we brought in new people who had just gotten their PhD. We call them postdoctoral fellows. And we had a group, and my colleague, David Rummelhart, and I were teaching the group what we were doing so they could take part in it. And I remember I was giving a lecture about a thing called the perceptron. It was a very early neural network that just had a bunch of nodes. That's all. And it was very powerful, but very extremely limited. And there just couldn't do very much of great interest. And I was explaining that, and there's a famous book about them, when one of the new people we had just brought in said I was wrong. Well, I like it when people tell me I'm wrong because, first of all, if I'm wrong, I need to know so I can correct it. And second of all, I usually learn from that. And even if I decide I'm not wrong, I sometimes decide I'm not talking about it properly. But this person, he was right. I was wrong. And I was developing a field that is today called human-computer interaction. So I didn't continue with that work, but my friend, David Rummelhart, did. And together, the two of them invented the first neural networks with 3 layers. And it was the layers that made it more powerful. And that person, a few months ago, got the Nobel Prize for developing neural networks. His name is Geoffrey Hinton. And but he was working at that point. He had started a company, and Google had bought it. And he was working for Google. And he quit. And he said, I'm leaving because I don't like what is happening with these networks. I think they are destructive. But he's one of the ones who has played an extremely important role in building them. It's only afterwards where he started thinking more and more about it that he decided that he wanted to be able to speak freely about the problems. He also pointed out that Google was not stopping him, that they were not telling him what he could say or not say, but he just said, I feel I'll be more comfortable if I'm not working for a large company when I am criticizing the work. And Jeff is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and so I think I don't know what the answer to the issues are. All technologies have both good and bad. But the important about this new AI is that, first of all, A, it's artificial. Second, intelligence? No, it's not intelligent. It has no understanding of what it is doing. It is what's called pattern matching. It has been fed basically all the pictures of the world, all the movies of the world, all the words that have been printed in the world in many languages, in many places. And so when you give it a question, the prompt, it uses that as a pattern. And now what it does is it searches its database for something that is close to that pattern. And so when it finds something that's close to that pattern, it sees what the next step in the pattern is that's missing from the Chrome, and it gives you that. And that gives it a new pattern, and then it just goes one by one expanding the pattern. So it doesn't understand, but because the patterns tend to have the right meaning and so on, or the right images, it comes up with really very good answers. But they sometimes can be crazy, and sometimes they're false, they're fake. And then there's a problem that as these systems are being tested, as you notice, every month they get better. They get better and better and better. Will they take away your job? I think that if you decide that you don't like them, they will take away your job. And that's simply because a lot of what you do, it can do better than you. So if you were an accountant and you could really add and subtract and do numbers well, and you ignored the invention of calculators, you'd be out of a job. But we still have accountants. But what the accountants do is they use all the powerful tools. They use spreadsheets. The invention of a spreadsheet was really interesting because it took away a lot of the work that accountants used to do. But the good accountants said, oh my goodness, this makes my work better because I can do things I couldn't do before. And on top of that, it doesn't make arithmetic mistakes. Now, interestingly enough, spreadsheets make other mistakes. Spreadsheets are not a good design because hidden behind each cell of a spreadsheet is an equation. And what happens is as you make the spreadsheet bigger and bigger, the equation may no longer point to the correct part of the spreadsheet. And it's very difficult to know whether the equation is actually correct anymore. And so many companies have actually lost money because the spreadsheet was actually wrong. It wasn't, you're asking it to sum a group of numbers and it's doing the wrong numbers. It's pointing to the wrong things. So that's a good example because it means, and I think it's exactly the good example for AI. I think AI can make your jobs better, make you better, remove a lot of the tedious stuff that you must do. Skills of drawing are very important, but you can spend hours and hours making the rendering and making it, realistic and lifelike. And why? Let the machine do that. It can do it better than you. But except it won't necessarily do the drawing that you are interested in. So you have to learn how to use it so that it's working on the drawing. And maybe you do a rough sketch and give it to it and have it polish it and complete. But by having a machine take care of things that it can do in seconds, what might take you the whole day, you can then think more deeply about what the problem is you're trying to solve. And when you give, just like artificial intelligence, for example, makes calculators easy. Calculators used to do arithmetic. Today they can also do algebra. Today they can also solve calculus problems. They can also produce graphs of the information you've given them. So what we are good at is giving them the setting up the problem, giving them the equations, giving them the numbers, and then evaluating the answer. Let it give me the answer. But then I look at the answer, and especially if I say, give me a graph, show me this, show me that, I can say, oh my goodness, that's not right. That is, I've given you the wrong problem. That isn't the way I have to think about it. And that's what will happen in design. You'll be able to prototype, at least through pictures and maybe even through making, much more quickly, and you can therefore ask more deep and better questions. But only if you understand the equipment, only if you understand the AI, which means you should be playing with it right now, every day. Notice that search in the internet. What we used to do was we were searching for a website that might have the answer to the question. I don't do that anymore. I tell it what I'm really looking for. I'm trying to remember this book I read, and I can't even remember the title or the author, but it was about how the people who really succeed in the world are not the people who have done this one task and are the world's expert at it. The people who succeed in the world are, they learn this thing and that thing, and they go to all sorts of jobs, weird jobs, and then somehow they become great business executives or successful. What is the name of that book? You hear the description I just gave you? That is actually real, because there's this book I read and I can never remember his name, and that's how I have to recall it. And guess what? The answer comes back. In fact, I did that just yesterday because I wanted to tell somebody the answer, and I can't remember now the answer anymore. I should recommend the book to you because it's a great book, but it has the wrong title. So that's why I can never remember it.
We will use AI to find the answer.
The book is called There it is. So what I did is I have this database of all the books I know, which has right now 5,000 books. And I just added to the database all the words I can think of that I used to try to remember the name of the book. The name of the book is Range, R-A-N-G-E. What a bad word title. And the subtitle is Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And I think that's the power of designers, because designers are generalists. Because as you work in design, if you're in a company or especially if you're a design consultant, clients of all sorts come to you and ask for you to work with them. And so you begin to learn all sorts of new disciplines. And that gives you a huge advantage over other people who always do the same thing. You're a broader thinker. And it's interesting because universities like specialists, people who are really the world's best in some narrow field. And I tell people that designers don't have any general knowledge. Designers don't know anything about the world. And I say, and that's the strength of a designer. If you know too much about a field, when you're asked to solve a new problem, you use what you already know about the field. And so that restricts your thought patterns. And what's great about the good designers is I don't know anything, and I'm asked now suddenly to solve this healthcare problem or some other problem in a field I don't know anything about. So I have to ask questions. And I ask stupid questions. What's a stupid question? It's one where everybody says, that's a stupid question. But don't let them stop there. You say, okay, why is it stupid? Well, everybody knows the answer. Okay, why does everybody know the answer? Well, we've always done it that way. Why have you always done it that way? Maybe there's a different way. Stupid questions are often the most powerful questions. And so the strength of the designer is you don't start off with a preconceived notion and preconceived solutions.
So actually I had a follow-up question, but you answered it. Designers here in India fear AI. and you answered it so beautifully. You gave an example of an accountant, and yep, thank you so much for that. There are a lot of questions flowing in. But there is one very interesting question from Ishika Gupta. Can I read that out, Don?
Yes.
Okay. As you are known as a father of UX design, a field that has changed how we interact with technology, what inspired you to come up with the idea of UX? Was there a specific problem or experience that made you realize the need of human centric design? Also, looking back, how do you feel about the impact UX has on the world today compared to what you first imagined? It's a long question.
Human-centered design, the term is fairly new, and it emerged actually from many different kinds of people working together. It was at first called user-centered design. I may have used that term in first. I'm not sure, because my research group at the university, I was at the University of California, San Diego, and we were working a lot on trying to actually understand how to design things for people. And so we published a book of the work of my university students, but also we brought in a few other people as well. And one of the people in the group suggested that the name should be user-centered system design. So that's user-centered and then system, which is important. User-centered system design. But notice the initials, UCSD. That's the name of my university, University of California, San Diego. So it was a very nice coincidence. So that was one of the first uses of user-centered design, which later on I decided I don't want to call you users. I want to call you you're human beings. So we called it human-centered design. I'm now sorry because I don't call you a human either. I call you a person. So I should have called it people-centered design. But again, I'm not the only person. There were lots of different people. And interestingly enough, there were two completely different groups of people working together who didn't know about each other. There was a design community who were starting to move in this direction. And there was the psychology, computer science community, which was developing what became human-centered or human-computer interaction. And they didn't know about each other. And so each one thinks they discovered HCD. And later on, I didn't know designers at that point. Later on, as I began to know and work with real designers who were trained in design, I found it interesting that I didn't know about them. They didn't know about us. But today, fortunately, we all know about each other. We work together. When I finally decided that I was a university professor, but I really getting more and more interested in products in the world and new things that were happening in the world. I had been using computers for a long, long time, including the very first computers. The computers so big you could walk inside of them. The Remington Rand Univac. It was called the Wonderful Brain, but it had, you know how much memory it had? 1,000 words. Yep, that was the powerful, very expensive computers in the very early days. But in any event, so I was already using computers in my laboratory as tools to run the experiments and so on. And I decided it was time. Well, I decided that I wanted to see what industry was like. And I was already consulting for Apple, and some of my students had worked at Apple, were working at Apple, and helped develop the early Macintosh and their software. I was also a consultant for the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, which is where the early computers were really first done. First, what you see is what you get. Menus, highly excellent graphics that you could actually print what you saw when you typed it in a word processor. It was what you see is what is going to be printed out, what you get. What WYSIWYG we call it. What you see is what you get. So I was ready. And I went to Apple, and Apple at that point computers were so easy to use. They used good principles. They had a human interface guideline book for how to do it, which to my surprise, I discovered was written by one of my students. Maybe not a surprise. And but I thought that no, Apple was getting harder and harder to use. And I went and complained. I was at that point I was called an Apple Fellow. I had a job that was considered a very senior job. Only a few people had it, and I could do anything I wanted. And so I went to my friends, like the vice president in charge of software and so on, and said that the quality and ease of use was going downhill. And I said, because every time there's some problem, you ignore the ease of use and you try to fix the technical problem. And their response to my complaint was, okay, you're on the committee that makes the decision about where we're going to put the work. And I discovered that once I was on the committee, you'd be told that, we have to finish this product in another month because we then have to get it in stores in time for sales to students. And so we don't have much time to fix the problems. And so here might be two problems. We only have time to fix one of them. One of them is this part is really confusing for people. They make errors in using it and they get very frustrated. And this other one is after you've been working for a few hours, the computer crashes and loses all the work you've done for those few hours. Which one will you fix? They're both very serious. But of course, I ended up always fixing the technology problem. Crash that destroyed all your data. And then I realized that the problem there was that they were thinking too narrowly, because they would be thinking about there's just one place where it's confusing. But if you actually look at the entire system, you see there's a lot of things in the system that should be redone, which would cause the problem to go away, would make it much easier in general. And so I got together, I formed a team. I brought two other people with me. So the three of us said, let's try to change the way we design our things. And we were looking for a term, and I don't know who came up with the name, but we decided to call ourselves the User Experience Architect's Office. And I gave myself a title, I am Apple's User Experience Architect. And so we actually made changes. We convinced them that before they started a new product, they got the marketing team together and the engineering team together, and they had to agree upon the specifications. And I made them add the design team, the UX. We didn't call it UX in those days, the user experience team. And all three had to agree, and that was very important and very valuable. About a few months ago, somebody wrote me and said that I was not the first person to use the term user experience, that actually someone else had used it first. And it was Brenda. See if I can find Brenda, because I had trouble remembering her name too.
Brenda Lauren, I think.
Brenda Laurel. And interesting, they said Brenda Laurel had used it in an article, in a chapter in a book. Well, I know Brenda Laurel. In fact, I was sort of a mentor of hers for a while, and I looked, and it turned out it was, the book User-Centered System Design. It was a chapter in that book. It was the chapter in the book that I had edited and I had worked on. So I had to say, oh, and I read that, what she had written, and she used the word working, because her background was theater. And so she was talking about the experience that people have, about the user experience. So that's probably where the term came from. And, but I was the first person to use it as a job title.
So there is one question that I really like from the whole group. I just reformed that thing. So most of the time we say that, design must solve some problem. So is this really a true statement, or design is beyond problem? Design can be correlated with the purpose. It can be connected with goals or something like that. So why we always focus more on problems when we talk about design?
Because I think on the whole, there's another question that's related to this. On the whole, that's what we spend our time doing. That people wish they could. That they're having a problem with their task or with their life or in their kitchen or whatever, and designers can be very good at, if you like, solving them. I argue that you should solve not the symptom, not the description, but the problem that's underneath it, the underlying cause. But yes, that's what most designers do. Now, there's another. I'll ask a different question, which is closely related. I got asked this just the other day. The difference between incremental improvement of something, because all these products come out, and then we make some small change, and another small change, and another small change, and that's because your product comes out, and there's something that's wrong with it that isn't so good with it, and so we work on the problems, and the problems are the problems. But the radical change is when somebody comes up with an entirely new idea you never ever thought of. AI is a radical change. Today's large language models is a radical change. And it has really changed a lot. And it's so radical, we actually don't even know yet what its impact will be. A lot of people like to write about the weaknesses, but it also has huge strengths. But we don't understand what it's going to do to the world yet. Well, so radical innovation, I even have a paper on this, on radical versus incremental innovation. Radical innovation changes the world. But incremental information does too. If you take a look at, the telephone, or take a look at automobiles, start with the very first telephone. The concept is the same as the very first one. But every year it gets slightly better and better and better and better. And the equipment we use gets better, and the sound quality gets better and better. To today, we carry it in our pockets. And it will still get better than that. We'll probably have some day where we don't have to carry anything, or we're wearing something. And the sound quality is better and better, so that we can listen to high quality music over our telephone, if you will. In fact, the cell phone, the mobile, is called a telephone, but we've actually hardly used as a telephone. We use it for all sorts of other things. But each of these changes was slow, small incremental changes. The automobile, they used to be so complex that early people, we used to have to take their mechanic to drive with them, so that when something went wrong, they could continue driving. And we used to always have spare tires on our cars, because we always got flat tires, and we always had to carry an extra tire with us. Today's modern automobiles don't have spare tires anymore. And that's because over about 120 years that the automobile has existed, it's had slow changes year after year after year after year. So the answer to your question is that, yeah, in many ways we are problem solvers, but we also are problem finders. What I try to teach design researchers is, don't try to solve the existing problems. Try to find out where there are new opportunities. And the way you find that out is, don't ask people. If you ask people what problem you should solve, they talk about something they're doing, and then there's some difficulty they have, and they'll tell you about it. But what you need to do, if you watch them in their work, or watch them in their recreation, or so on, you would see that there were things that you could do that make it better, that they never thought of. See, part of what I point out in this book, Design for a Better World, is that the way we're brought up, when you're born and you live in a world, you think that everything is the way it ought to be. It doesn't occur to you that there are other ways of living or other things you could do. And the breakthroughs come when somebody realizes there is a different way of doing something. But that's rare. Most of these new, wonderful ways of living and doing, they fail. And even when it's a brilliant new concept that actually will change the world, it can take 10 or 20 years to do that. So the answer to your real question is, both are required, incremental and radical changes. solving problems and finding problems through incremental improvement, which is what finding problems does, to changing something completely differently. Well, the problem is people don't like something that completely changes, so it takes them a long time to get used to it, even though it may end up changing.
That's true. I think we should not only focus on the problem, we also have to focus more about finding what's going on around so that we can maybe pick something which is very critical and we can solve those things at the same time.
Sometimes what you do is you have this is a little bit what's happening with large language models, that although they're completely different than anything we've ever experienced, it's designed so that it doesn't appear to be that different. It's just like typing in a search term in your website, except because you can use it the same way. But you soon discover that, I don't have to do it that way. I can type my real question, or, I can type a 50-word question. I can actually ask it, I can give it my the sense of what I've just written and say, make it better. Or, I can say, summarize it. Well, yes. But what's nice about it is that it's a radical change, but you don't have to switch everything at once. You can learn to use it step by step and start increasing how you use it. That actually makes it unusual. But you have to be careful. For example, it's now built into many systems. Like we're using Zoom now. Zoom has an artificial intelligence built in that will summarize the conference, summarize what we've been doing. And its summaries are horrible because it gets all the words right, but it doesn't know what was important and what wasn't. And I was at a meeting where I was given the minutes of the meeting, which was created by the AI, and it said that I said something, and what it said was correct, but what it left out was why I said it. And as a result, it gave the completely wrong, just the opposite impression of what I was talking about, because it didn't understand the context. Fortunately, the minutes were sent to the people at the meeting to revise it if necessary, and so I was able to revise it. But so, on the one hand, it's really useful taking notes. On the other hand, it's because it doesn't understand how important it is, which is important and which is not important. You have to be careful and revise it yourself. But it saves you a tremendous amount of time.
So what AI tool you are using, sir? Maybe we can explore more from that point of view.
One of the problems is there's so many companies coming out with stuff that I'm always experimenting and playing with different ones. And one of the interesting things is that most of the GPTs, the generative pre-programmed transformer scheme, are very similar to each other, and which is better, it varies from week to week. But there are many, many startups, thousands, believe it or not, around the world, with people trying to do new, clever things with these large language models and similar. And that's where the real excitement is going to be. It's going to be where the specialized knowledge is. So, for example, on a website again, I'll go back to something we haven't talked about. I'd like to talk about it. I have a Don Norman Design Award in Summit, in which I give awards to early career people who are just starting out, but who are doing something of great societal benefits. And I want to give it to early career, not to experienced people. If you're experienced, you get an award, it's nice, but it won't change what you do. When you're starting out and you're struggling and it's difficult and you may think you're failing, that's when you need the reward. And so that's what we emphasize. And we also emphasize places that teach you how to do this. Well, so if you want to apply, there's all sorts of questions. So I qualify, what do you mean by this? How do I do it? And so we have something called FAQs, frequently asked questions. Now, you've probably seen FAQs all over the place. Are they useful? No, they're a waste of time. Because, first of all, most of the questions are not really asked questions. Somebody made them up. But second of all, even if there's that they include the exact answer that you're looking for, how do you find it? So sometimes it's just impossible. Yeah, here's 120 FAQs. I'm not going to read all 120 to see if any one of them answers my question. Well, we don't need FAQs anymore. So what we are doing for our for the DNDA summit, which will be last November, it was in San Diego, California. In November 2026, it will be in Singapore. A lot easier for people in India to get to. And easier to get a visa to go as well. The United States is difficult. We're developing an AI system, and we've already given it the entire contents of this book, and the entire contents of Designer Everyday Things, and the entire contents of our website, and the entire contents of the winning projects from last year. And so now you can ask questions about it, and it's pretty good. It's better than the FAQs. And of course, you can ask the question in whatever way you like, and it will figure out what you're trying to get at. We're not ready to release it yet. It's not yet good enough, but we're already testing it.
I think AI is going to help a lot of organizations to scale. The way you have indicated, we don't need FAQ anymore because it is more smart to answer very specific to the context that user is asking. Another side, when we look at it, there are a lot of downside of AI. And the way you are indicating, design for better world. What do you think about AI for better world?
In order to do a better world, we're going to need all sorts of skills, and there's all sorts of problems. One of them is simply the economic structure we follow, and that's not an AI problem. That's a human problem, greed problem. And so we have to be able to change that. We have to change the reward structure of universities from, how many papers did you publish? No. Please. The number of papers I published is not important. It's, were they important papers? How valuable, how useful were they? And most universities don't ask that question because they say, we don't know how to answer the question. So they count papers. And that has led to lots of crap, lots of junk that is published. And not only that, but what if you don't publish papers, but you're a really good teacher, you're a really good motivator? They should get promoted too. Or what if you're not a specialist? You're not the best person in the world at this topic, but you're really good at putting things together. Universities don't reward those people. Not because they don't recognize they're powerful and they're good, but because they don't know how to measure it. And I think that's because they're not trying. So, we have to change lots of things that have nothing to do with AI. But AI can also be very valuable. So one of the solutions in manufacturing is called the circular economy. And what the notion is that when we build something, we try to make sure that when its life is over, first of all, we try to make it live longer. I build you a new phone or a new car or a new something. I try to make it easy to repair, easy to upgrade. So I could upgrade the software easily, but I could even upgrade the camera. If I could open it up and unplug the existing camera and plug in a new one. So it might make the device a little bit thicker and a little bit bigger than we have today, but if you could keep upgrading it, that would be much better for the environment. And I should be able to reuse the stuff that I am taking out. Just like my laser printer, it's a Canon laser printer. And when I run out of toner, what I do is I buy a new toner cartridge. It has 4 cartridges, black and white in 3 different colors. I unpack the box and I take the old toner and I put it back in the box. And I print out a mailing label that Canon gives me, and I can mail it back to Canon at no cost. And Canon says they will reuse every single part of this cartridge. That the used up material they will use for road paving and for fertilizer, and the metal parts, so they'll reuse as much as possible in new ones. And they say there's no waste. That's a circular economy. It's what nature does. It reuses everything. When you die, or when plants die, or animals die, they become fertilizer. or which creates food for the next growth of of plants or animals. But it's not easy to do, and it changes the business model because many companies make money by selling products, lots of products, and we're saying no, the product should last longer. Well, then they have to have a different business model, which probably is services. You know, I'll guarantee you will have a printer as long as you need it. You pay me a monthly fee, and people don't like paying a monthly fee, but actually, it doesn't have to be any more expensive than buying the thing. And it allows, but again, it requires a different way of working. And so, but AI is also good at maybe helping you devise new kinds of business models, at maybe learning how to design something that will last longer or easier to repair. There are lots of things where AI can play an important role, but AI in this case is a tool. It's like saying, is the solution to the problem today? People? Yes, but not every person. Depends upon their skills and how they're used. So is AI going to be useful? Yes, but different kinds of AIs, and we have to learn how to use them to help us do our jobs better. So I wouldn't say AI is a solution to today's problems, but there are many different things that will be used in the solution, and I think AI will be among them.
So there is one thing which I even thought of, and there is the same question pop up here in the screen. So I'm just reframing that particular question. So it is more related to a fast moving digital world. It is basically very addictive. We are getting very addictive to the digital technology. So how we can get out of those addiction and how we can be more meaningful. Because digital is not only from the perspective that we are moving forward, it might be a possibility that we are also declining because of this addiction. Can you say something to us on that, so we will be using digital technology wisely?
That's up to each person. For example, I have a rule, which is I don't do email in the evening. I read in the evening. I also make sure I spend time with my family and my wife. It's many people who are successful spend all of their time on their career, but have difficulty with the family. It's important to have a good life as well in your family. So my family, my children are all now living in other places, but so once a month we have a video conversation with the entire family, everybody, no matter where they are in the world. And that's what video is good for, actually. But also, again, I spend a huge amount of time on email, and also on chat, on Zoom calls. I like to reserve the morning times for when I'm doing creative work, but I can't do that because when I'm talking to Europe or I'm talking to Asia, well, I have to work in the morning. So this morning, for me, this phone call started at this Zoom call at 7:30 in the morning, and but of course that means it was late for you because there's almost a 12-hour difference between India and California. It's 12 and a half hours actually, and but yes, the point is you have to leave time to have a quality life. Don't be trapped. Doesn't matter how good the video game is. Put yourself with time limits and don't play it more than your limits. Or email, which for me is very important and useful, but no, I can't spend my entire life sitting in front of the screen doing it. I have to have some time to think and create, but I also have some time to be a person, to relax and to be with my family. At this point, my family is just me and my wife living together. The rest of my family is dispersed in different locations, but I spend time with them as well. And so this is up to each individual how to do things. You don't have to be trapped. Remember, they're designing the systems deliberately to trap you and keep you there and keep you there and keep you there. Turn off the announcement that says you have new email. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And the way you have retired 5 times, I need to learn from you, like how we can use the time in a way that you're using it, so we can also enjoy such beautiful life.
Here's a good question. A good design keeps making life easier. Should we start designing ways to keep people from forgetting how to think? That's a contradictory question. I want life easier in order to give me more time to think. Uh, th- you know, people keep thinking, oh, if I make it so easy, people won't have to think anymore. No, 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 no. I want it so that you devise something so that I don't have to think about how to use the tool, but I can, in fact, think the tool is so easy to use that I can think about the important problems that I'm using the tool for. Making life easier means making the things that are done badly and get in the way of my ability to have time to think about the important things.
So what do you would like to ask Om?
Yes. Well, hello, Mr. Donovan. First of all, I'm a very big fan of yours, and I've been watching you, listening to you constantly, and throughout the day. Why I'm basically a visual communication designer. I edit videos, and when I'm editing videos, there are times when I listen to the podcast, and I've seen you talk about the digital technology reshaping the culture of creativity. What I wanted to ask that it blurs the line between roles like creative director and creative engineer. But as tools like AI and generative design become more accessible to every designer and to every person, so do you think there will be a time where there's no role assigned with the word creative and that's just creative? Or moving forward in the future, will there be something like what do you call it? It's a thing where there's a use of technology everywhere, right? So you can be creative very easily in these generations. Is there really a need to be a creative director or a creative engineer? Why not just creative?
Well, first of all, technology has always made us more creative. Um, you know, in fact, and many times the creative technologies have been invented by artists because artists and musicians have always been experimenting with musicians with new ways of making sounds. The people who do percussion, especially, have been the most inventive about what kind of sounds, how you make a sound, and finding objects in the world and banging them together. And oh, that's interesting. And with electronic music now, making new sounds. So, for example, it used to be that when you spoke in an auditorium, um, your sound would go in with a loudspeaker. You talk in the microphone, the sound comes out of the loudspeaker, goes back into the microphone, comes out of the loudspeaker, and it's an oscillation. And pretty soon there's just horrible boop throughout. And technology has actually now cut that out. But early musicians used to get this feedback, and all the engineers said, "Oh, we should get rid of the feedback." And also, if you set up the gain too much, it distorted the sound. But you know what some of the early musicians did? They said, "Oh, those are interesting sounds." And so they started playing the distorted sound, and they started, "Oh, you know, if I hold the instrument just this way, I get this feedback, and if I hold it that way, it's different feedback." And they started to deliberately create the feedback in a really creative way. Here, the engineers are trying to get rid of it and trying to make it a pure sound, perfect the way you done it. And they're saying, "No, I don't like that. I like the fact that it's not pure and that I can change it and modify it and be creative." So creativity comes from all sorts of things. And the artists have often invented, well, new kinds of paints. They invented the notion of perspective, which made you able to do something that was more lifelike and real and realistic. And then the camera came. And so artists used to make a lot of their money by painting pictures of people and pictures of landscape. And the camera could do a good job of a picture of a person and a picture of a landscape. So And artists they pride on the fact their pictures look very realistic. Well, guess what happened? Did art disappear? People thought with art would disappear, that the camera would take over and there wouldn't be any more artists. No. Artists started saying, well, I'm going to paint the inner you. Or I see you from all sorts of perspectives. I see you looking straight on. I see you when you're really tired. I see you when you're happy. I see you when you're, in different positions. And so I'll draw up your face from all those things at the same time. And so we suddenly got this revival of great creativity in art and doing things that were weird and strange and wonderful. Now you use the word director. So, okay, we can still do creativity, but why do we need a director? Because actually, a lot of this technology, there's new books coming out, which aren't books, they're dynamic. Why is a book static? Because it's on paper or printed on paper. But, we can use computer displays. And today, some of the displays are just like a book. They're very thin, but they can be dynamic. So why not make something where the illustrations come to life? Or maybe if it's a book on science, there's real graphs and pictures and so on. But I can manipulate the numbers and see how it affects the data. And or I can make a story where the people pop up out of the pages. I once did that with the Design of Everyday Things. It was unfortunately written for the early Macintosh, for the program that no longer exists. But when you were reading the book and you didn't understand this concept, you could click on the page and I would pop up on the book and I would walk across the page and I would say, oh, you're having trouble with this. And I would give an example of what I was really talking about. And I would even point to the diagram on the page. That was really neat. But you know how many people it took to create that? It took a year to create that. It was a short 1-hour film. But it wasn't a film, but it was on top of the book. It took a year and it took many, many people. So a lot of the creative things that we'll be developing are going to take groups of people. Hence, the need for a creative director.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that for me. Sit on normal.
I also had one question. As you mentioned in the conversation that when you visit India, you visit the healthcare sector here and some of the hospitals which don't have many resources and don't have many funds. So you teach people there to design for themselves, but they will not necessarily be designers. So if you can tell me what you mean by that, why when you teach people to design for themselves?
First of all, one reason it's important to do this is I don't want designers to be colonialists. The British came to India and said, oh, stupid people, you don't know how to govern yourself. And we know how to govern a country, so we'll govern your country for you. Wasn't that nice of Britain? No. Well, designers do the same thing. We send designers in and we say, oh, I understand your problem. And they go away and they think about solutions. And they come back and say, here's a solution to your problem. Do people like that? Well, maybe if it's a simple everyday problem, yes. But in general, no. I don't like other people telling me how I should live my life, what I should do. And worse, quite often, this is how foreign aid is done. You bring in the foundations or the governments, send the world's experts on the issue on public health or education or sanitation or whatever, transportation, electric power, whatever it is. They go into the community and they study it for a few months and they go back and they write a big report and say, here's the solution. And they cost billions of dollars and takes many years and almost always fails. And the experts are good. They understand the problem. The solution they propose is very intelligent, but they don't understand the people. They don't understand how the people live. They don't understand what their capabilities are. So first of all, it changes the way they live. That's not good. I mean, it changes it not necessarily in a good way. It changes it more towards the Western way of living, which is not necessarily a good way. Second, almost always it requires good electric power. uh, air conditioning, clean water, all sorts of things that don't exist in every community. And on top of that, it requires things you can't repair. So, what I've learned to say is if you want something that no matter where it's built, it can be repaired, make it out of bicycle parts. Because almost every place in the world has bicycles and people know how to fix them themselves. But the proper way is that the solution has to come by the people. And designers should work with the people so that the people understand the problems. They can even understand some of the solutions they want, but often they're attacking the symptoms, not the underlying cause. Now they know that, but they don't have the resources because as you get into the causes, they're more difficult to solve. And so they may need assistance. Because a lot of it has to do with politics. Because any large problem ends up being a political problem. And so I think what we have to do is be advisors and facilitators for communities. So in the DNDA program, what I call humanity-centered design, how is it different from human-centered design? Well, in two different ways. First way, we have to think about the impact on the environment and on people's lives. So we have to think of that we're designing for a whole system, which is not just the product or the service, but it's what it's doing to the lives and the community and the environment and all living things. But second, when we're designing for a community, we must do what is called co-design, collaborative design, participatory design. That when we're designing for a community, we can't tell the community what to do, but rather we can be advisors, but only when we're asked. We don't give advice without permission. We can help them solve their own problems. Is it easy? No, it's very hard. And it requires new kinds of skills, especially skills of decision making. And participatory design is almost the skills of a psychiatrist, because you have people with very different opinions. You get the community together, and they don't have a single idea. They have many ideas that conflict, and they fight with each other about which way to move. And so you have to get them into an agreement in order for you to get the work going. So it's hard. But, everything worthwhile is hard.
That's very true, sir.
Okay, so
So I got an excitement the moment you said community. So we have this Sandskriti community, which is specifically a designers community, and we work very hard in order to grow that community. So what do you suggest, like how important the community is actually required in today's era, and how we can grow the community which has some sense? Sense means it's not just a digital community, like people are doing something together and things like that. So what do you suggest us in order to build community which has bigger sense, not just a group of people?
I think actually everybody, I can turn back to Anil on this, because when you start a company and you hire people, it's a community. And you want people to believe that they're working in a supportive, comfortable group community and doing things that are important. And if they realize that they're doing something that's important and that their skills are, no matter how small their skills, even to the new person starting, that they are contributing to something that is important, that's what brings and keeps a community together. So good communities do have differences of opinion and do have different kinds of people, and they can disagree. But if you still respect and like the other people in the community, that's how you get along and have a real effective community. Yeah, you and I have different opinions about this, but we're still friends. We still work together. It's hard, but once again, there are lots of companies that have this kind of atmosphere and lots of companies that don't. And as you work for a large company, you may discover that your group is wonderful, and then suddenly there's a restructuring of the company, and no longer is it so wonderful. It's because it is hard to keep it going. But I think I've done this successfully a number of times, and quite often it was unsuccessful for the first few years as I struggled to figure out how to do it.
Oh, Thank you so much, Mr. Norman, for this insightful discussion. We really appreciate the time you provided us to, out of a busy schedule, to uh, address all the students and the experienced professionals here in the community. I would also like to thank everyone else in the panel, Mr. Pramod and Mr. Anil Reddy, and Sandskriti for being the community collaborator with us and making the session a success.
Thank you very much for having me.
I will one last question, Don. I forgot to ask you when I met you. Is this your default style that you pose, or every time I see you, uh, even the last time when I met you, that's how you say?
It has come to me the fact that, I mean, I naturally take this, but it's also now become sort of my standard. And so you will also see the Design Lab at UC San Diego now. There's a photograph of all of the people, and everyone is doing this. And so I had to sort of, first of all, this is natural for me, but second of all, it's kind of fun when everyone is trying to copy me and make fun of me. I like that.
That's a nice one.
You know, when I started the Design Lab, the head of the university gave me two instructions. He says, or three. He says, you can do anything you want, but there's two things. It has to be important, and it has to be exciting. And I've always run my life that way, is that I want to do things that are important, and I want to have fun doing them. So, do people like this and make fun of it? Good, wonderful. Do people make fun of Norman doors? I'm famous for doors you can't open? What? That's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, sir, I would like to, on that thought, I would like to show you something. Would you like me to show it to you?
I don't know. What is it?
Is my screen visible?
Uh-huh. My beard is white, not black, but okay.
Yeah. It's still currently work in progress. So yes, that's all I wanted to show you. The iconic pose of you. We used in our caricature. Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. We have learned a lot from you today, and there are a lot of things that we need to explore. Probably, we would like to have more conversation with you. There are a lot of untouched points which we have in our head, and we really want to clarify that. And maybe we can have the conversation again, and we can discuss even more on even different perspective of design. Let's see. Thank you so much, sir.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Always.
Good night to you, and now I'll get back to my eat.
Yeah. So now let's move on to the teaser reel that we have for the offline design conference that we'll be hosting in IIT Patna.
Attention passengers, we've now reached our destination. We hope you enjoyed the flight and have a nice day.
Thank you everyone for attending the session, and uh, and being part of this wonderful discussion with Mr. Norman, Mr. Anil Reddy, and Mr. Pramod Sinha. It was really insightful, and we appreciate all the time that you all have given us today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.